Okay, maybe we should have been more careful. The only thing that I regret is the fact that John had to die the way he did, you know. And some people say if John was not in America, if he was in Britain, for instance, he wouldn't have been shot to death.
Yoko Ono and John Lennon's relationship was one of profound personal and artistic connection, becoming known for their collaborative work with Lennon's solo career and shared political efforts. Tragically, their relationship was cut short when Lennon was assassinated in front of her outside their New York City apartment on December 8, 1980. His sudden death was a devastating blow to Ono, as he was her rock and stood by her side through the most turbulent of times. In the wake of his death, Ono faced immense grief and public scrutiny as she struggled to rebuild her life for the sake of their son, Sean. Listen in her own words as she describes the enduring bond they shared and how John's violent murder haunted her for many years to come.
Where did you two meet originally? Where did it all happen?
We met at one of Yoko's art shows at Indica Gallery, I went along to see it and met her. And I met her a few times at different places. And then we clicked.
You just kind of discovered that your heads were in very much the same place.
Obviously, you had heard of John Lennon. Everybody had heard of John Lennon.
Well, I heard about the Beatles and I knew the name Ringo, and nobody's going to believe me, but still that's exactly how it was. And maybe because I'm an Oriental and names like John Lennon, Paul McCartney just didn't hit me, you know. Ringo hit me because Ringo is apple in Japan, you know, in Japanese.
Did you know that a Beatle was there, or did you have any idea who John was at the time?
At the time I didn't, but right after he left, there were students from St. Martin's Art College. And one of them said, "Is that the moon?" So I said, "What?" I said, "I think that's John Lennon of the Beatles." You know, and the way he said it very slowly, it sounded very impressive. I said, "Oh, really?" But I met him, and I felt that he was an incredibly interesting man without knowing so much about pop and rock and all that. As a guy, I thought he was a very interesting guy, immediately.
But love at first sight, Yoko?
Sort of, yes, I think so.
On both sides?
Well, ask John, but I think he said it many times that it was like a very strange, intense meeting.
There are millions of girls who would love to have met, let alone married, one of the four. Any one of the four, probably, but certainly a lot of them.
Well, I resent to think of him as one of the four, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, or any one of the four, etc. Because I just met him as another artist and all that, and I didn't, particularly realize that part of it, really.
The relationship with John Lennon was intense. By that you mean what? Terrific highs, terrific lows, what? Such a celebrated relationship.
We were very much together, even physically. I think we were together 24 hours a day. Unlike most couples where they had to go out to go out to work separately, or maybe just the husband going out to work or whatever. But it wasn't like that. We were always together. See, most people think that, well, he's a rocker and just kind of rough maybe, and no, at home he was a very gentle person and extremely concerned about me, but also concerned about the world too. And also, we really opened ourselves to each other and exchanged very fully. Every day was different because he made it well for me. And because he knew what I was going through. I mean, being a certain race and being a woman as well. All that he had an incredible concern about it.
John Lennon was tragically murdered on December 8, 1980, outside their apartment building in New York City. Lennon's death was a profound shock to the world, leading to an outpouring of grief from fans and fellow artists alike. In the immediate aftermath of Lennon's death, Yoko Ono was understandably devastated. In the days following the tragedy, she made a poignant public statement urging people to remember John's message of peace and love. Ono reflects on those dark days of grief and regrets she harbored when recounting the run-up to her husband's murder.
John did not die because he committed suicide or he was drugged or he had a heart attack. No, John was killed. And it was very important for me to show that to the world and for people to remember. Because I think that all of us are responsible of his death, of course, including myself. And both John and I were always trying to make a peaceful world. And it's very ironical that John, who loved peace so much, died in such a violent way. That night, we had a different situation. You see, because when we got in the car, I just said, well, shall we go and have a cup of coffee or something like that before we go back home? And John was saying, no, because I want to see Sean before he goes to... But you know, actually the way I feel about it is made as if he had known that his life was going to be not too long. He was a very, very prolific writer. And he did write so many songs, and write and produce so many songs. Okay, maybe we should have been more careful. But I don't know how we could have been that careful. The only thing that I regret is the fact that John had to die the way he did, you know. And some people say if John was not in America, if he was in Britain, for instance, he wouldn't have been shot to death. Now, I don't know. I mean, people could have followed him anywhere. And the fact that it was gone so suddenly, too, I think that affected me. Because if it was a slow process, we could have talked about it or anything. But the last John I remember is a very gregarious, energetic, high-spirited guy. And when he said that, you know, he passed away, I said, no, he didn't. He's alive, you know. I was very, very upset about it, you know. And I just refused to think that he died.
I mean, we all remember the night he died, and people coming spontaneously, and thousands of people outside singing. Did you hear those songs?
Of course, because my bedroom was right in front of it. I'm right next to it. And so all night I'm listening to them singing, or sometimes they play the radio, John singing. And when John was singing, it just made me feel strange because he's supposed to be in bed with me, and then, you know, it just wasn't very
Was it
easy.
helpful? Did it make it harder?
It made it very hard, yeah. Well, you know, it wasn't very easy for me because after John passed away, you know, I go to a shop or something and they're playing Woman, you know. It's a bit, just, you know, to choke me up, actually.
As the world mourned the loss of a much-loved musical icon, Yoko Ono sat at the center of this grief. She speaks about how she initially coped, the decisions she made for the sake of the son they shared, and how John's brutal murder stayed with her for many years to come.
When I drive by this building, I've never been in this apartment before, I sit and I think, why does Yoko Ono stay in the Dakota? Isn't that much more difficult for her?
But this is where we live together. This is where every room reminds me of John. For me, it gives me what's the reminder of love that we had too. You know? It gives me power. Yes. That was the only home we had, and that's the only home I had with John. I'm not going to leave it. And yes, so it seems like I'm holding on to his memory, but I'm going to allow myself to go through that instead of just forcing myself to cut myself off from the past. For instance, I still have packs of John's cigarettes, which I don't feel like throwing away. And it's in the closet as he put it in. You know, it's down to that. And then am I going to clean it up? Am I going to throw the cigarettes out of the closet, you know? But those decisions I have to make gradually. If Sean wasn't around, I could have just sort of sold everything, move on, and I could have been reckless. That's what I'm saying. And each time I felt like being reckless, I thought that I have to just keep the same life that John and I were leading, in the same apartment, in the same routine, for Sean's sake.
Yeah.
And also for Sean, that was the only home that he knows with, well, having time with his father. You know, everything in the house really reminded us of him. Every room is where he's touched. How are we going to beat that? I'm a bit proud about the fact that I survived. I survived all that knocking and terrible things that went on after John's death, you know? And, but I still can't get over John's death, which that part of it, I think I have to just cope by myself. And in a way, I think I just have to be kind to myself and take it slowly.
However, Yoko Ono is later questioned about what lasting effect her husband's tragic passing has had on her, whether she lived in fear for her and her son's life, and after years preaching peace and harmony, could she ever forgive the man behind John's senseless murder?
Do you worry now about your own life, Sean's life? There are people who are still out there. Do you worry about the safety issues?
Well, of course I do, but there's no point in just worrying every day. And so my feeling is that we always try to deal with a lot of difficult situations, John and I, with a bit of sense of humor and sense of fun. So
John's name has been in the news, obviously, an awful lot lately. Mark David Chapman being denied parole now for the 7th time for killing John. I realize it's very personal. And something that is difficult to talk about. But my question is, do you fear that one day he will be released? Is that something you live with?
I don't want to really talk about that. I'm sorry, but you know, it's just a very difficult subject for me.
How do you feel about the guy being paroled?
Oh, I don't want to touch that subject.
Okay, we shouldn't, because it hurts a lot of people.
And also, it's painful for me, you know. He's not a very stable person, and you don't know. John was actually asking that question. He was saying, Martin Luther King, Gandhi, those peaceful people, why did they get shot? Why did they get killed? He was saying that, you know. And little did we know.
Should Mark David Chapman be forgiven?
I know that the Pope went to the jail and visited the jail and forgave this person who was trying to assassinate him, something like that. But I'm not a Pope, and it's very difficult for me to forgive what happened. But I don't even want to think about the person that you mentioned now, and I usually don't, because it's so irrelevant who pulled the trigger.
Instead of finding it in her heart to forgive his killer, Yoko Ono has instead dedicated herself to honoring her late husband through numerous exhibitions and creative projects, as well as holding on to the private moments they shared.
Do you feel, because of the public nature of him and your marriage and the fact that you're both in some ways such public figures, that every time you're asked to talk about him and that past, that a little bit of the private side of it goes?
There are many different kinds of thoughts about that in me. One is the fact that, yes, there's some stories that I would never tell anybody, and I would take it with me, okay? But also, there's some stories that are kind of nice and fun to tell, maybe, and it's kind of the other aspect of us. Well, you know, somebody said, well, it's, how many years is it? 80, so the 20, 10, 30 years ago or something. So, and I still get affected by it. Yes, it does. I mean, it does affect me. I still miss him, especially now, because the world is not quite right, and everybody seems to be suffering. And if he was here, it would have been different, I think.
But what do you think? Like this video, if you believe John Lennon was the greatest songwriter the world has ever seen? And do you believe his senseless murder was preventable?